All right, we are live. This is the song we play, and it's quite relaxed. First I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. Just want to welcome all of you to the Stigma-Free Society Facebook Live. We are broadcasting at 2 o'clock from the Surrey School District today. Just going to give another minute for people to be able to sign on. I see some people signing on. This is great. And very excited to have anybody who's able to sign on now to join us, but also excited for those who watch afterwards. I know that we get a lot of people watching after work and or at night during lunch and things like that. So we're very happy to have anybody viewing. Also, thank you to the Stigma-Free Society for hosting this live broadcast to have people like myself and Nisha and other guest hosts you have talk about mental health. It's such an important issue, especially during COVID-19 and our new normal. It's so important to have the Stigma-Free Society hosting an event such as this. Very glad today to have Selma Smith, who's a district principal in student support services in the Surrey School District, join us today. I'll give her a chance to introduce herself in a minute, but I just want to remind everybody that we are, myself and Selma, in this case, are speaking on behalf of the Surrey School District. So that's always the disclaimer I put on there. We're not necessarily speaking as private citizens, but we are speaking on behalf of the district, myself as the host, especially speaking on behalf of the district. We're very, very blessed to have the Stigma-Free Society agree to host us, but everything we say is in line with our district philosophy and our district vision for school, for education, and for our procedures during COVID-19. So I just want everyone to have that disclaimer so you know who we're speaking on behalf of during this broadcast. But I have also posted my contact information here, which is also going to be on the page, my email address, phone number, Twitter, and blog, so that you can contact me at any time if you have any questions. I will be broadcasting every 2 weeks now. As we get closer to school being busy and it's the holidays, we're going to be broadcasting every 2 weeks, every other Tuesday at 2 o'clock to answer your questions about education, family, COVID-19 procedures, mental health and wellness, or parenting. So anything you want to ask me, please email or contact me at any of these email addresses, numbers, resources, and I'll definitely be in contact with you. So saying hi to those who are on from the Stigma-Free Society. Maddie, if you're there, if you ever can hear me, want to do a final check before we introduce Selma, because I don't want no one to hear her. So just doing a final check. Maddie, are you there? Maddie from Stigma-Free, or Andrea? Anybody there? I see a comment. I don't see a comment yet, but hopefully someone is there. So I'm just going to move forward, and hopefully I see viewers, so hopefully someone who is viewing can post a comment to tell me that they're alive and well out there in the ethosphere. But I'm going to give a chance for Selma Smith, who's District Principal of Student Support Services in the Surrey School District, to introduce herself and just a little bit about her history as an educator and what has brought her to her current job, and then we'll go on with the topic of the day.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I think I can. Oh, everyone's comments are coming up. You can see probably.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So yeah, thank you first of all for the opportunity to be on the Facebook event here today to share who I am and also share a little bit about the work that I do and working with counselors here in our Surrey schools. About me, I started off as a teacher and actually worked most of my career so far as a school counselor. So I worked in Vancouver schools as a school counselor in elementary and in a secondary school as well. And I also have worked as a school-based administrator in Vancouver and as a district principal of student support as well, always working closely with counselors. And I just joined Surrey School District at the end of January this year, 2020. So I'm still pretty new to the district, but also feeling very excited to be working here with many groups that support students and families in schools. And I say, you know, my work that I do, I just feel so proud and privileged to be supporting amazing people that do a lot of the frontline work with our families and kids. And I too as well meet families and kids and work with you as well, but through the support that I do with our staff that are out there doing the day-to-day work. And I feel very honored to be able to connect with them. And I'm here today to talk a little bit on their behalf of what they do day to day to support kids and families. And for me, a big what's really important for me that I just want to share with you is just this making sure people feel connected and a sense of belonging to their school or their community. So that, to me, I'll probably touch on that a little bit more, but having that belonging and feeling connected to others is really important. And Daniel, I wanted to just mention, sorry, to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional unceded territory of the Katzie Semiahmoo and other Coast Salish peoples here this afternoon. So I just wanted to acknowledge the lands that I'm on virtually.
I always forget to do that because I'm in the ether sphere, so I'm just like, I forget to do it, but it's so important to acknowledge where we are, and I thank you for doing that. Also want to say hi to Elsa, who joins us from Australia every week, so it's really cool to have her here again. Selma, thank you for that introduction, and it's so exciting to have someone with your expertise talking about counselors and about the work that counselors do. And I do encourage anybody who's on there to ask questions. We will get to them in the last 5 to 10 minutes of this broadcast. But I want to get to the first question that I have for you. And I think a lot of parents who are watching this after, educators, want to know what is the role of an elementary and secondary school counselor during this new normal? How do you see this role changed from pre-COVID-19 to post-COVID-19? Does the role change at all, or is what they're doing very similar? What is the role of these two groups? And maybe the roles are also different, elementary and secondary. Maybe they do different work, and maybe you can go a little bit into that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start talking, and then if you want, leave the question up there, Daniel, just so I can Yeah, I'll talk a little bit to share a little bit about the elementary and then the secondary, and then I'll also address how the role has shifted a little bit. And the role has shifted more because of the response to our new normal and the world that we're in. But I'll start off by saying elementary counselors here in Surrey schools. All of our elementary schools have one counselor, and their time does vary a little bit depending on the size of the school. So our larger schools have the counselor that's there a couple more days, I would say, just because of student enrollment and such. And our counselors work very hard to provide direct support to students who might be needing some support, whether it's for social emotional reasons. It could be responding to career, personal planning, health, like their health and such, maybe having referrals to community or child and youth mental health. And so counselors do a bit of screening, a little bit of assessment on students if they're referred around their mental health, and counselors help them advocate and access supports in the community that at times can be beyond other counseling. It might be other organizations that provide support for that student, whether it's short term or longer term. Our counselors also assist students with peer support, like peer-to-peer support, if they're needing some support negotiating friendships and such. Also conflict resolution that sometimes can come about, and it varies, from younger kindergarten. Conflict might look a little different as the kids get older. So our counselors provide age-appropriate supports to kids, and it can be in small groups, it can be through a classroom intervention, or it could be one-to-one. So they provide that. They also work closely with families, so the parents, guardians of children, so connecting with the parent caregiver of the child to help them if they're looking for any kind of referrals or support or questions around. Sometimes it's might be transitioning. We have new students coming in from other schools or moving to another school or to high school, for example. So they may have questions about the process, and a counselor is a great resource to help with those types of questions as well, if need be. They're very knowledgeable. If students or staff, for example, might have need some support around a student that might be in crisis. So if there's domestic home issues that might be related to abuse or trauma, a counselor is an excellent resource to help support school-based staff and students as well, and responding to that, as well as a mental health crisis if a student is in. Our counselors are trained and equipped to help students navigate through that piece. So that's elementary.
Okay.
And our high school counselors. So our high schools are quite large sites here in Surrey. So we have multiple counselors that work in our secondary schools. And usually our counselors they could be assigned by grade, like depending what grade the child's in, or sometimes it's the counselor is assigned not just to the grade, but it could be by alphabet. Some schools organize by the student's last name, or they group kids in that way. So every student, elementary or secondary, has access to a school counselor. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And so high school, that's how it typically is organized. And our high school counselors do very similar work as well as elementary, for sure, supporting students who might be having maybe some mild symptoms of anxiety or depression, for example, or other degrees that mental health needs, so they can help and assess that and refer on or navigate I would say the referral world of child and youth mental health in our community. Also, our high school counselors are very knowledgeable just around career, transitioning onto careers. For example, they liaise with other people in the district and the school around that, post-secondary as well too, helping students with their graduation planning around their coursework and where they're hoping to head towards their finishing of high school. So sometimes it might be for post-secondary, which is furthering college or university. It might be exploring other types of trades or other types of work opportunities. So counselors have resources and support that they can give to students on that. And they're very just knowledgeable a lot in the secondary teenage years, and do encourage people not just to seek out the counselor if you're in crisis. So that was my sort of hope for today. Counselors, speak to your counselor if you're having a good day. It doesn't always have to be on a bad day. Like, please, reach out. Counselors want to know how their students are doing and do those check-ins. Let them know, and I guess that'll move into the next part of your question here.
Question before. Actually, we do. It's actually cool. We have an elementary counselor logged on here. So, Lindsay, good to see you. She also works with Stigma-Free from time to time, and she also has a weekly broadcast. So, hi, Lindsay. One of the questions here is, and it's not the next question, but training. Actually, a lot of parents actually, and it's question 1A. What training do all of our counselors are teachers, right? They're all teachers, certified teachers. What additional training do they have to qualify them to be counselors?
Yeah, so thank you for whoever asked. That's wonderful. I can't see the comments or the chat, so I'll have to rely on you for letting me know. So our counselors are teachers, so they're certified BC teachers. They also are trained in a master's in counseling psychology, and they could have received that master's graduation training program from various universities that offer that training. So when I did my training in master's in counseling at UBC many, many, many years ago, and the training itself is theoretical, but it also has a practical component as well too. So counselors have gone through a practicum counseling component. Sometimes they do practicums in a school setting or practicums in a community or clinical setting to give them that experience to help clients or students with personal or social emotional needs as well too. So hopefully that answers that question.
And as we get to the second question, it's so good to know that, and we tell kids that our counselors are trained to help them. It's not just being with random teachers sitting in an office, right? And while we do encourage students to go to their teachers, because that's the person they see every day, seeing our counselors is so important because they're trained in that additional layer of support that some of their English teacher or math teacher or science teacher may or may not have. So.
Absolutely. So they're trained mental health folks. Daniel, I didn't answer the last question. Sorry, the second part about the COVID.
Okay.
I'll quickly touch on that. So our counselors have been working very, very hard to adapt to this new normal. So last spring, counselors, we knew that mental health needs of our students and safety is top priority. So our counselors were offering virtual online sessions, and they still are right now for students that are not in, maybe they're in a distributed learning or online blended program, for example. So their students can still access their counselor virtually. So the role has just changed more because students might not be in the building, but I want folks to know they can still access their counselor virtually and set that up with their counselor.
So good. Maybe that leads you to the second question is, why are counselors even important? Why do we have them in our schools? I've often called them one of the four pillars of school counseling: athletics, extracurriculars, and the office and that kind of support. But why are counselors a pillar? Why are they even important? Why do we need them?
Oh my gosh, Daniel. Well, I'm biased because I am a school counselor, but I am absolutely. I mean, our counselors are not only trained mental health clinical people that can support students, but they also, because they have that training, they also work with students across all grades. So they have they work with students throughout the grades as they move up in age, so that knowledge and that experience that they have working with students and families along the way are really important. That consistent, safe adult. And they provide, in terms of supporting students who might have an IEP, an individual education plan around maybe mental health or a behavior need. The counselor is trained and knowledgeable to help the students who are on individual education plans in particular with that type of profile. Yeah. And they certainly bring a lot of knowledge and experience to a multidisciplinary team. So I want to say they're important because they're part of the school-based team, the multidisciplinary folks in schools. We have other roles as well that provide support to kids. And so having a different perspective or view, and they advocate for students. So to me, the advocacy for student well-being and their academic needs, their counselor is their advocate at the schools level. So please be assured by that.
Okay, awesome. And I have a follow-up question for later, but let's get to the third question first. And I think it's so important that kids, parents know this. They might think they know, but I think there's lots of fear, especially even if you go online and trying to contact your counselor through Teams or going to the office and being seen in the office of a counselor. I think there's some inherent stigma, and this is the Stigma-Free Society, and it's to combat stigma. So there is stigma sometimes in seeing a counselor. There's stigma in seeing a therapist. So how do kids overcome that from your experience as a counselor? A kid in crisis should do what? How can they seek help?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't stop. So if a student is in crisis, please keep reaching out. Reach out to a safe adult. Maybe you might not be able to connect with the counselor right away, but finding a safe adult a trusted adult, so an adult that you trust that can listen and support you. And to not, like, if you've told somebody and you're needing some help, but as a student or child, you're not feeling heard or you're not feeling supported, please reach out. I would say get, your school, your counselor, other staff at the school, your teacher, your principal. People are there to help and want to help. And I would say, please, I would, it saddens me that sometimes kids have to ask more than once for help, right? We want kids to be able to get help in a timely manner and of course, be believed for how they're feeling and what they're experiencing. But the reality is sometimes, they may have to tell or ask more than one person, and that shouldn't be the case. But I'm hopeful that, as students and children know that to please, there's multiple resources, there's phone numbers, there's texting supports, there are people at school, other community supports, multiple people that are there that want to help. So just keep reaching out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. And I do have before we get to the questions from the audience, you're much better at keeping time than me. I try to burn through like 6 questions in 10 minutes. And Maddie and Andrea, who's the CEO of Stigma-Free, says, yeah, you got to cut down the questions. You talking really fast. I'm like, okay, no problem. And you're so much better at keeping time than me, so Selma, so thank you. One question I have is not a surprise question, but one we were talking a bit before we started the broadcast. Who helps the healer? I know that when I was in your counseling, when I had the privilege of presenting at your counseling meeting, you did do a lot of, check in, how you feeling, check in with the staff. Who helps the healer? Because counselors are bearing all this weight of the 1,500 kids, 500 kids, whoever's on their caseload. Who helps them? How do they get rest. And what do you suggest for a counselor or for a teacher or someone like Lindsay who's watching? How can they make sure that they stay resilient and strong for doing the work when they're bearing not only their own lives during COVID, but also the lives of all these kids and families seeking their help?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that and how you worded it too, the healing, because the work itself is I know it's very rewarding for many counselors that feel very honored and rewarded by the work that they do. But it can be sometimes it's hard. It's hard to hear stories, and folks carry that with them. So I think, for me, I really encourage our helping people, the helping adults, whether you're a counselor or another helping adult, to really connect with your colleagues, have that network, a professional support network, mentorship group, seeking out a mentor, somebody that you can go to. I've always encouraged our counselors to make sure they have another colleague on speed dial, so making sure they can reach out to somebody if they have a case consultation question. I make myself available as their supervisor to always be timely and available to support folks. But I encourage them to seek mentorship, reach out, and taking part in services and training that I know our district, and thank you, Daniel, your team offers a lot of Pro-D and training as well. And so encouraging folks to participate in learning as well too, which helps build community and connection, and kind of, I think to reflect on practice is really important too.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to the question in the chat again, where the last 5-10 minutes is left for that. And usually the questions go to Maddie at Stigma-Free Society or to Andrea. So the first question in the chat I can see is, and we talked about the training. So what can external mental health organizations, such as Stigma-Free Society, do to support schools and school counselors? And that's a super important question. We have Child Youth Mental Health, we have Stigma-Free Society, and some other societies as well that work with kids in schools. How can they partner with counselors?
Oh, I think it's, wonderful. I mean, I'm great that Lindsay's on here and part of the organization. And Lindsay, well, way to go. Very pleased that, you're here. And, any opportunity where there's opportunity to collaborate, right, with Stigma-Free Society or other organizations that support children and youth with mental health in particular, where we can collaborate together, have voice, have counselors represented on those committees and working groups, I think is really important, because they are frontline. They see and hear from families and students, and of course they do keep things confidential and private, but if there are emerging themes that they see, those are things that they can take forward and share with other organizations and advocate for children's well-being. So I think any partnership that we can have with counselors present is going to be helpful for them.
Yeah, I know some counselors also, I'm not sure if Lindsay has it in her office, but they have the different organizations pamphlets out, and so kids that need child youth mental health or families that need sort of community support, such as from Sources or from Stigma-Free or from Options or PCRS, that's usually available in the offices as well. So I know that our counselors in our district are very open to outside agencies, and we're not closed off to helping, like partnering with anybody else. That's correct, I think. The next question is, what advice can you give parents who are concerned about their child's mental health? Is it important to reach out to their counselor? Can the parents do that? It's not just the child showing up at the door. Can parents call counselors and say, hey, my kid's like hiding out in a room, what do I do?
Yeah, and anybody can refer to a school counselor, whether it's staff, parent, the student themselves. It's very low barrier. There isn't a whole a process to go through. It's, just reach out, make an appointment, connect with them.
Yeah.
In terms of the parent question, I mean, parents know their children best,
Yeah.
and your child, and if your child's behavior or needs or well-being has shifted or is you're concerning to you,
Yeah.
reach out to your teacher, the counselor, a staff member at the school, or other folks that are in the community that you may be connected with. So I think parents following that hunch around how their child's doing, and it's concerning when they've noticed a change in their child's mood or behavior or feelings. Be curious about that. If you can ask your child directly, in a gentle way, about being curious if something's happened for them, or they maybe sometimes students have conflict that happens, or peer conflict that might for us as adults seem small or part of life, but for a child it might be a very, very a first big conflict they may have had, right? And so how they are heard and how that gets worked through is we see that a lot in schools. It's common, and they're learning how to navigate difference and conflict and such. So that's just one example. There's many other reasons, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and I did last week. I pointed out that as a parent, like as a father, I try and ask very pointed and specific questions instead of saying, "How was your day?" and letting my kid go, "Oh, it was great," and then never answering again. Sort of like the answer you get when you pass people in the street. You ask, like, one thing we like to ask is, "Who did you play with?" My kids are still in elementary, so who did you play with today? What kind of conversations did you have? What did you talk about when you were eating lunch? Like very targeted, specific questions, so my kids learn the languaging to express themselves to me, and through that I can tell a little bit of mood changes. And definitely, as you said, parents can reach out. We have time for one more question, and then maybe you can wrap up with any closing comments. But how can school counselors support fellow teachers? Because we have a lot of teachers who watch this video, I hope, and who don't know where to start when it comes to mental health wellness education. Where can these teachers go for support? And I do want to plug, before you answer, that we do have for the district, and anybody who can get onto YouTube Live, really, a monthly Pro D we're putting on for district staff. So that every second Wednesday, which is next Wednesday, we'll be putting on something 3:15 to 3:55 for district staff. But Selma, there's other ways that teachers can get support, especially if they're seeing something happening in the classroom, behavior changes, mood changes. What can teachers do to get support from their counselors?
Yeah, I know that. I mean, we have quite a few elementary schools, large, over 100, maybe even 130. So each of our counselors at the schools would work out with their colleagues in terms of referral, or they may have a regular meeting time, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, where students of concern are brought up to have a multidisciplinary meeting in terms of how to best support. And so that's a process that some schools, I know we have school-based team, for example, but that relationship with teachers and counselor will be it will vary per school, I would say, but for the most part, I know that counselors would be available. In terms of curriculum or support, there are a lot of wonderful resources. There's training opportunities around social emotional learning, mental well-being. There's the Stigma-Free resources as well too that I've looked at. So our teachers and counselors would connect together and share some of the materials that are out there, and work collaboratively.
Okay, awesome. Well, before we close or end, any final comments from your time here with us? And so thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I know you're just upstairs, but the video is good to keep us both COVID free, and so and get the social distance. And so, any final comments?
I just want to thank you all for being on today, and I just want to commend you for the great work that all of you are doing to do such important work. And never more has this work ever been so much important to be able to connect. I love your hashtag Together We Can. So knowing that there is a community that, like us here, that have connected, I think is really important to keep the conversation going. So I like, Daniel, how you have every 2 weeks. Just keep the conversation, keep it going, bring a friend next time, share and keep, we want mental health to not be stigmatized anymore. And so we have to keep those conversations going.
Absolutely. And once again, I want to thank Selma, my colleague and friend from upstairs on the 3rd floor, for sharing her knowledge with us. Please feel free to email. If you want to ask Selma a question that you didn't get to, or you're seeing this at midnight at some point and you want to ask a question, email me, text me, go on Twitter, ask me a question. I will forward it to Selma. Make sure that you guys get an answer, and I can answer it either on next broadcast, or if you send me an email, I'll definitely shoot you an email. And I also want to be remiss of us, both Selma and I both want to thank the teachers out there. The day after National Teacher Day, I want to really appreciate all the heavy lifting that our teachers, counselors, support staff, anybody teaching kids out there. You do such great work. and you're out there saving lives, especially in this pandemic that we have. I think I speak for Selma and myself, and on behalf of the district, thank you, teachers, for all the great work that you do in our district and in our province, in our country. And nobody can do the work you're doing. You're affecting and changing the future. So keep pressing, keep working hard, but remember to rest as well, so that you can be re-energized and refocused every single day to work with our youth who are the future. So thank you all very much. Selma, we're good?
Thank you very much. I'm going to, I guess, do you just, I sign off, or what happens?
I'll sign you off, but I always like to also play my theme song at the end. Thank you all for coming on, and is this working? Is my theme song working? Oh, here we go. Remember to survive and thrive out there. Remember to log on, watch Lindsay, and watch Nisha, and watch all the people on Stigma-Free, and come back in 2 weeks where we can have our discussion and continue the discussion on mental health and wellness. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe.